Don't say I'm going to change my whole life. Just say I'm going to do one thing. And maybe for some people who are really out of shape, it literally might be, I'm going to do one push-up.
So everybody knows Pierre from the cameras, been on TV every single day. But let's talk about Pierre when he's not in front of the cameras and when he's working out. How do you feel?
How do I feel when I'm working out?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the exercise I'm doing. If I'm doing cardio, I feel terrible. If I'm doing weights, I feel great. I'm not a cardio guy, but I love lifting.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? I've seen you come here making time in your busy schedule, and as a coach, I gotta admire that. What drives you, and how do you find time to even get in that 20 minutes? And what does it do for you?
So, well, I'll tell you a little bit about my program,
Mm.
and then I can tell you what drives me and how I make it work. I probably only train a total of a couple of hours a week when you really add it up. Like sure, the odd time I can get a real blowout workout in where it's top to bottom and I'm sore for 2 days, but most times it's a quick tune-up exercise routine. Like I'll be in a hotel room in a small town where they don't even have a gym in the hotel, and I'll do 100 push-ups, maybe a plank, a few physiotherapeutic exercises to keep the joints in place. And I carry with me a bungee cord so I can do more pull-based exercises. So that can be done in like 15 minutes. A lot of people say, I don't have time to work out. You can do a full workout if you really want to in 15 minutes. I mean, you're not going to become a world champion in weightlifting or bodybuilding that way, but you will keep your fitness. You'll burn your fat. You'll get your metabolism moving. Your muscles will be solid and strong. So that's the most frequent workout I do. And then I try to do a serious one a couple times a week. And I do kettlebells, and we can talk more about that later, and some dumbbells and some body weight. And that's the program. So that's the question you asked was, how do I get it in? It's by trying to be nimble and working it around my lifestyle, because I can't carry a 60-pound kettlebell with me when I go on the plane, and there's not a gym around every corner, so you just have to make do. And frankly, your body was made to do exercises without machines. Your body is the machine, as you've taught me, because you have so many of these different routines and exercises that you have developed on your own. You can basically turn your body into the machine. What drives me? I think it's important for all people, but men in particular, to be physically strong. I think it allows you to be strong psychologically, and it also it gives you the mental strength to persevere through hardship. So in addition to just feeling good, feeling strong, and knowing that I'll hopefully live a little bit longer, it actually makes me feel better psychologically to push myself through a workout.
So when you're going to make a decision, it makes it a lot easier to answer a question or deal with an obstacle that's kind of, hindering that situation you're dealing with. You find that the exercises that you do help you to get through that.
Yeah, so you as you know, Tony, because you have a lot of different exercises that require you to switch your brain on.
Yeah.
Like it's when you go to, if you do the meathead workouts, flat on your back doing a bench, that's fine and it's good, but it doesn't require your brain coordinate a lot of different activities. But you've showed me some exercises that require your brain be thinking very carefully about how, bracing your core, balancing your legs, placing your feet in the right spot, all while you're gasping oxygen and your legs are full of lactic acid. And so what does that teach you? It teaches you how to focus on the thing you have to do. And I think the most important thing you can do for your mental health is to focus your mind on what you have to do. So often in life you get hit by whether it's trauma or distractions or personal loss or just overloading stress, and your mind can turn to how that feels, and then you become paralyzed by the feeling. What you can learn from, you can train your brain to do while you're exercising is to notice that, yeah, your legs are burning, your lungs are sucking air, but focus your mind back on the physical movement you have to carry out, the thing you have to do. And then if you train your brain to do that in the gym, when you go into real life and you're encountering something that's uncomfortable, difficult, strenuous, instead of focusing on the discomfort of it, you focus on what you have to do.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. And I was going to say, okay, so look, people know that exercise is really good for them. I think in general, most people understand you have to get active. So if exercise was the new medicine, it's like a doctor prescribing a prescription. So people know if exercise was a new medicine, why are people not exercising? Why are not everybody, but why the majority of people that, for instance, could be, you know, deal with preventative stuff by doing the exercise? Why aren't people not doing that? Why do you think?
Well, it's, people like to procrastinate. It's hard to get started. I think the hardest part is getting started.
Yeah.
I mean, even myself, there are times when, you come in from a cold day, your body is aching a little bit with frost in your joints, or you get up in the morning and you're feeling rusty and you're just like, I'd rather not do it. And I think the solution to that is, especially for people who haven't trained in a very long time, don't say I'm going to change my whole life. Just say I'm going to do one thing. And maybe for some people who are really out of shape, you literally might be, I'm going to do one push-up. That's it.
Right.
And then tomorrow you do 1 plus 1, and then 1 plus 1 plus 1, and then 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. And I'm breaking it up and not saying 3 and 4, because if you tell your mind you just have one to do and then one more to do, it's easier than telling your mind that you're about to go in and do this huge, elaborate Herculean workout. So if you're one of those people, I mean, obviously you're not, but if you're one of those people who hasn't trained in years, and you should, don't think, oh, I'm going to change my whole life. Think, how could I do one thing today? And then tomorrow do one thing, and then the day after that do one thing. And before you know it, you'll get into a rhythm. And by the time you get through a couple of weeks, you're in a full-blown training routine. You're feeling much better.
But one thing I have to say, so everybody asks me, do you teach fitness? I say, I don't teach fitness. I transfer bodies, uplift spirits, and strengthen mind. You talked about the mind. Your mind, I'm not just saying this, is it's unbelievable, like how strong and positive you think. And I'm not just saying this, I've witnessed it. I mean, I'll give you an example. An athlete at a high level, like is playing in the NHL, the difference that separates that guy is he's believing that he can do the things he does. I see these guys and I can pick them out when they come in. I could say, because I just see the body language, I see the perseverance, I see the mindset. And you have that mindset. I mean, I've witnessed you do 120-pound dumbbells. There's probably one, maybe two people that are a pro athlete level that can do that. And I'm like, how does this guy do this? And, I've actually showed the video to people because some people didn't even believe me. And they're like, what the heck? And I say, it's all in the mind. I mean, your mind is able to like, leaders do this. And I think that's a big accomplishment on your end, because you don't get in as often as you should, because obviously you have other things to do. But the fact that you do when you can, and you do that kind of weight and push through, is unbelievable. And that's why, like you were saying before, if someone could do just a little bit and see the progress, it's going to create a lot more interest, and it's going to make you feel a lot better. Like I've had people come in here where they've had, a headache, and it's like after the workout, the headache is gone. So, I mean, the whole aspect of feeling better and thinking better on an emotional, spiritual side, I think is really, really important. And you've accomplished that. So to me, that makes me feel good, because when you're going to make a decision, when you're dealing with some obstacle, I'm like, this is a guy that I need that's going to go through this obstacle, whereas other people that don't look like that, I have a hard time being in this fitness industry, putting my my thoughts and my opinion in that person's hands. Like I'll tell you, one time when I was choosing my investment guy, I actually went to one of my locations and I saw the hardest working guy there, and I said, "What does this guy do?" They're like, "He's a financial planner." I said, "That's the guy I want," because the fact that he was going through this, hurdles and just working his butt off, I'm like, this guy's obviously going to carry that momentum in his own work, and
Right.
and that's something you do that I really admire.
Well, I think look, there's exceptions to the rule. There's obviously some people who are not in shape, but who do fantastic job in their career, and then there's some people who are in fantastic shape but don't perform as well in other aspects of their life. But I think there's probably a correlation between being fit, strong, and doing well in your career and other aspects of your life. I also think that for men in particular, having physical strength is very important to your health. Having muscle mass, uh, it doesn't mean you have to be jacked or huge, but just the ability to lift heavy weights, to explode, to jump, to do all the things that our species did for thousands of years throughout our the prehistoric times. That's important, and obviously we live a much more sedentary life because we have machines that do a lot of the work muscular labor used to do before. But I think it's very important for men to be strong. And I think cardio is important, but I think when you get into your middle ages, my own view is that lifting and kettlebell swinging and other things that require sharp, strong contractions are actually even more important than running. That's just my personal
Yeah,
bias.
no, they
That's just
are.
my personal bias.
They
I
are.
love if people like to run, that's great, but I think they have to add physical strength to their routine.
A thousand percent. People talk. There's always that discussion that comes up, and I say, look, let's say you're running full speed. Yeah, cardio. What most people have to accept is that it sets your heart, the way your heart pumps blood.
Right.
So if you're running, yeah, you're going to get a good cardio workout. But if you want to get your heart rate up, and I get you to do these hand clean to press, where you're pushing your weight over your head
Yeah.
for 10 reps, your heart rate's going to shoot right up too. But you're also going to have the benefits of working that resistance and building that muscle around your joints, that as you do get older, early symptoms of osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, you could develop a lot more stronger muscle and tissue around the joints
Yeah.
that obviously
Exactly.
will, prolong your health, will not get you in
It's like a muscular
exact
cast.
a cast. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy. So that's really important. And then, I mean, another thing is there's a lot of addiction out there that you've witnessed in your travels. And what's your opinion now on the fitness and people that are, trying to get into these rehab programs?
Well,
How do
I'll
you
tell you
feel
a
about that?
story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
So there's an organization in Saskatchewan, and what they do is they give apprentices to high school dropouts and young people who've been in and out of jail. And they call it an apprenticeship. Basically, their job is to learn how to function in the real world. So they bring them in and they teach them how to make change so that they could be a cashier or a waiter. They teach them how to write a resume, how to show up on time, how to complete a basic task, how to use a word processor, things that most of us take for granted, but someone who's a young person who's been in trouble with the law and has lots of addiction problems might not have been able to learn. And then they get them good habits. So anyway, one of the organizers at this place, and they deal with really rough kids. Like these kids have been in a lot of trouble. One of the organizers of this place took some of the money and went and bought a bunch of used, rusted out weights
Okay.
and created a tiny little weight room. And at lunchtime, invited mostly the guys in the program to lift weights. And what they found was that not only were these guys getting into shape, they were starting to like it. And they didn't want to drink anymore, and they didn't want to smoke dope anymore, because they were looking at themselves in the mirror and they were saying, "Holy smokes! Look what I can do with my arms! Look at my chest!" And and when I actually went and visited them, like they were starting to look pretty jacked, and they were thinking, "Geez, if I go drinking tonight, I mean, it's like blowing 3 workouts." Like they beat themselves up in the gym for 3 workouts so they can go pound back a drink. No, they didn't want that. They wanted to be bigger and stronger. And so when this group submitted its expenses to the government said that wasn't part of the program. You're able to expense photocopiers and rent and administrative things. And they said, well, but this thing actually had more impact than all of the other administrative stuff that we normally did, because as these guys stopped doing drugs and started doing exercise, they started developing more work ethic and discipline. Their brains were being cleansed of all of the poisons they'd been putting in their body, and they actually went forward and succeeded. And the weight training became sort of like an analogy for their life. That if they worked hard, they could have great things. And then they replicated that in their work and in their behaviors and in their daily routine. So that's just one example. And most of the drug treatment facilities that I go and visit, they have like a fitness element. Some of it's sometimes it's yoga, sometimes they just play basketball, volleyball, weights. But you have to, I think that part of drug rehab, and by the way, a lot of the guys that I meet, I highlighted a guy in my convention speech who literally tried to kill himself because he was so hopelessly addicted to drugs. Then he went into recovery. Now he's got a business and he's got a probiotics drink with 6 employees and he's doing really well.
It's awesome.
But he looks very, very jacked. He's very muscular now. So you can tell that a big part of staying off drugs for him has been to pump iron and stay in shape. So I think we need to push this more. And that's one of the ways I think we can break the addiction crisis, the mental health crisis, and so many other crises that are overtaking our younger generation.
Yeah, it's amazing you said that, because I was at a breakfast, I remember years ago, and it was to raise money for mental health. As you know, it's a big concern these days. And I remember speaking to the doctor, and I said, what's the main cause? And he said, there's a neurotransmitter in the brain, dopamine, and it's that feel-good hormone.
Yeah.
When you're doing something that's fulfilling you, you're like, wow, it's like a self-accomplishment. I did this. And I mean, a lot of these patients have been on antidepressants, and I guess they see that the level of dopamine is a lot lower, so they just kind of give them more antidepressants, and and then there's exercise. And we all know there's several studies out there where they've taken groups that have exercised for 16 weeks and then groups that have taken antidepressants, and after weeks there wasn't really any significant changes, but people that continued to exercise were able to think better, feel better about themselves, kind of what you're talking about with those programs in the rehab centers, where people were liking what they were seeing after lifting some weights. So how do we kind of introduce that a little bit more, because it is a touchy subject, because it's tough when you're dealing with somebody's brain, and there's always that clash of opinions. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I had parents here that their kids were not in the best state, and have been feeling a lot better about themselves just by introducing some form of exercises.
Yeah, look, I think there are probably 2 ways. I'm not a brain scientist, so I'm not commenting scientifically here, but this is my intuition. There are 2 ways that you can get the dopamine rush to your brain. One is through instant gratification, and the other is through earning it by sacrificing, working hard, and actually achieving something that's worthy. And that gives you a dopamine rush. And that can be an incredible workout where you break new limits and achieve new things. It can be, in my line of work, it's a speech that you slave away on for a long time and then deliver it well. For a businessman, it might be working 4 months to get that incredible deal. For a parent, it's like working hard to see your child succeed at something, and you get a dopamine rush from that. The best way is that latter way, is to earn the dopamine, like do something that is meaningful to your life or to the lives of others, even better, that gives you that brain rush. And that's what we want people to come to. And, one of my speeches, I mentioned Viktor Frankl recently, and he wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he had a therapy. He's one of the greatest therapists of all time. And he was basically saying his theory, and he learned it while he was in a concentration camp, was that what man needs more than anything, is not to have an instant pleasure gratification. It's to have a meaning that he pursues relentlessly. And that can be through hardship and discomfort, but that meaning can keep him going. And so that's what I think that every person should try to find their meaning and pursue it.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I mean, the biggest thing I see is that most people that exercise that start to see a big change feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
So what happens is they go to work, they make better decisions, they deal with obstacles different, they have more confidence, emotionally they feel better, spiritually they feel better, and that's where I always say to people, look, it's not the way you look, it's the way you feel. And when I have people that are working for an establishment, it's like the more they feel better about themselves, the more productive, the more better they're going to feel about themselves because, they like what they see, right? They look at themselves in the mirror like, I like myself. I mean, I've had uh, people where I've had like employers call me and said, whatever you did with that person, continue because their behavior is amazing. And I mean, I've had some CEOs that run very successful companies that people have actually called me and said, keep doing what you're doing. And they've seen a huge behavior change, better productivity because now they're feel good about themselves. They're not holding these emotions inside because they're not feeling good about themselves. So
Right.
everything just works better. And I think that's one of the reasons why people should be active and should exercise. That way we could prevent a lot of this stuff, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, and that's what I think you're doing, and you're pursuing your meaning and purpose, which is to expand fitness through your gym, and I think we need more of that. And I don't know exactly what the right lever is, but I think we spend a lot of money on healthcare. The federal government alone spends $54 billion on healthcare, and the provinces, I think there's every province in Canada spends more on healthcare than any other line item. And that's all fine, but we should be thinking about how, instead of just spending it on after the fact uh, treatments to overcome injuries and illnesses, how do we prevent those things from happening in the first place?
Right.
You know, if you had fitter, more robust population, you'd have fewer mental health problems, which means you'd have less crime, less addiction. You'd have probably more higher incomes that would pay more taxes into the treasury and less cost from that treasury. So I think there's a need to reprofile some of that towards promoting real fitness, wellness, and good, healthy living.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, if you look at years and years ago, how hard people worked, I mean, people did live a lot longer. They dealt with obstacles a little bit different. And like, I can't afford to be sick in my job.
No,
I can't afford to not,
you got to plow through it.
exactly. You got to plow through it. And this is the attitude you start to develop. I think I see it with pretty much everybody that exercise that I speak to. It's kind of a language that everybody goes, look, I'll get through this hurdle. Whereas some people might, turn real quickly to, a prescribed drug or just an over-the-counter drug that they think that makes it feel better, right?
Yeah.
So this is the kind of thing that I think more and more if people get involved in,
Yeah.
they will
And I
definitely.
think we have to ask too: are we overprescribing?
Right.
Like and I'm not judging anyone who's on medication. There's good reasons for medication, but the system is geared towards prescribing. Like let's face it: if they prescribe a lot, then the pharmaceuticals make a lot more money, and and it's an easy thing to do.
Right.
So how do we exhaust all the other options before we instantly put people on medication? And that's something I think we need to ask ourselves in our health policy: how we incentivize a system that gets people well rather than just medicates the unwell, which is also what has to be done, but it's not the optimal outcome to medicate after the fact rather than promoting true health before the fact. You agree with that?
I do agree with that. Totally.
So what do you think are the best methods then for, say, middle age? Because you have me throwing around a lot of kettlebells, a lot of different like sprawls and lunges,
Yeah.
and what do you think is the best system out there?
Well, I think what the best system is that people rush into things. I know throughout my career, the science always evolves. And one of the things that I started doing was ingrained in your big toe. Like for instance, working out without shoes, because when you're in your shoes, you lose the flexion in your feet if this is your feet. So, you lose that grip. And if that big toe's not ingrained, then all of a sudden, your heel takes over saying, okay, am I stable enough to withstand this force? Then it goes to your knee, then your knee collapse, and your back collapse. So it just goes right up the chain. So creating some good stability for balance, even as people get older. Like I know a lot of seniors, the worst thing you could do is fall when you're a lot older. They say strength and balance is the key. Are you able to withstand? Are you able to hold the railing? Are you able to walk and without losing your balance, especially in this cold weather that we have here, right? To slip and fall. So, really, really important that you want to withstand that force and then build the strength. But the way you do it is you build it in a style where you go slow for 2 weeks, where you actually learn the technique properly. And without getting too much into the science, you work that actin, myosin head, which these muscle fibers remodel and get thicker. And then 2 weeks after that, holding in that low position where you could withstand that force. And then 2 weeks after that, go and do the whole concentric part. So it's like, kind of think of 3 years. So that way you learn how to do it. You accept it more. Obviously the risk of injury is limited, which is key as you get older. And then that way you could see if this is, you see the progress, which is going to create a lot more interest because you're going to love what you feel. That's the thing. It's not about, again, we talk about it's not really about how you look, it's how you feel. I mean, most people that see, and as a guy like you, they would never think that you could probably lift this kind of weight, right? Just judging it. But when they see it, they're like, holy cow, that person is strong. And I think your muscle tissue, your skeletal system's a lot stronger than most people, because there's no way you'd be able to withstand that kind of force. Like when you're doing that weights, I mean, you push some heavy sleds, you snatch over a 180-pound or 90-pound kettlebell. That's not easy to do. And people that are listening to this in the fitness world, would definitely agree with that.
I think kettlebells are the best, though.
Yeah.
I really do. I think they're the most primal of all the exercise technologies, other than your body weight. And, like they go back thousands of years. And there's archaeological evidence that ancient Chinese cultures used similarly shaped technology. I think theirs was more of like a concrete, an ancient concrete, but it was a handle with a weight on the bottom. I think there are other ancient cultures that have used them. The Russians brought them to us, though. They, how they started in Russia, though?
I don't.
They used to use them at the farmers markets to weigh the farm produce.
Oh,
so
wow.
They basically have a weight, and on the one hand of the weight would be the grains or the potatoes or whatever, and on the other they would put a kettlebell, and it would have a consistent weight. So I don't know what it was, 20 pounds,
right,
or whatever. And so they would weigh it, and then what would happen is the farmers, when they were bored, would start swinging it around, lifting it up, and then when there were farm festivals, these farmers would then put on contests, and they would show off what they could do. And it was part of, like, the farm festival would you'd be showing off your livestock and your implements and tools. But one of the things they would do was like a strongman farmer contest, and the thing they would throw was the kettlebell. And it was brought to North America by this guy. His name is Pavel Tsatsouline, and he called it a cannonball on a handle. And that's kind of what it is. I think of it more as like a catapult, though, because it has a catapult kind of dynamic to it, which requires explosiveness. And it also, interestingly, on the way up, you have to be more explosive than you would be if you were lifting a dumbbell. But on the way down, it's slightly more forgiving because it swings through your hand, and then you can absorb the downward fall more gradually. So I think that, look, dumbbells are fine, but in real life, lifts are not slow contractions where your body, you don't stay in a fixed position where you're bringing it up a weight at an inch or two per second. You have explosive pushing. That's how you would, you'd be lifting things if you were working in a lumber yard or something like that 100 years ago, or on a farm. And so I think the kettlebell is the best replicate of the kind of strength that humans have needed throughout the ages, and that makes you overall strong. That you could probably survive on 2 or 3 basic kettlebell exercises and do nothing else
Yeah.
if you wanted to.
Yeah, you can do so much with them. And
Yeah.
the key thing is when you're moving it, like you were saying, everything has to stabilize because it's you, if you don't stabilize it, thing's going to go flying
Yeah.
out of your hand. So everything has to contract, your core has to stabilize, your legs have to engage, and it works pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So now let's go back to Pierre again. So okay, look, you're a politician. You're one of the hardest guys that I know that works their butt off. I've never seen a guy honestly work harder than you. And you know you're a dad, you're a husband, you're a great guy. How do you balance everything? Like how do you do this? Because man, I mean I see what you do. How do you balance everything?
I go back to the first part of the conversation. You just have to focus on what you have to do every day. That's what life is about. You have a mission, you have a purpose. Mine is my family and my work, and those are the things I exist for. And so I focus my energy on those things and pretty much nothing else. I have a few hobbies that I enjoy. I enjoy exercise, watching MMA, socializing, reading, but I try to zero in on what my life's purpose is, and it's my work, to basically get the country back the promise that it gave me and my family. So my 2 kids and my wife, and I don't claim that I hit it out of the park in either category every day, but just try to get out of bed, show up, and keep on going. And I think that showing up, even when it's hard, that's the most important thing. Just showing up every day. And that's what I do. That's how I try to juggle the things that need to be done. And every day is an adventure.
So how did the fitness journey help you with that?
Like I said, I think it focuses me. It makes me. It teaches my mind that life is not a pleasure craft. It's not a pleasure machine. It's meant to be earned. And when you're doing a fitness program, you have to earn it. Like, it's not always fun. There's no question the times you go into a gym, you're like, I really don't want to do this, but you push through it. Or when you're on the last few reps of, particularly for legs,
Right.
legs are the hardest, and you're like, man, I want to stop now, but you know what? I'm going to push out those 2 more. Focus on what you have to do, and then you bring that into your real non-fitness life, and it makes you stronger.
Yeah, so that's incredible. So sometimes I mean, you come off a plane, you've been there for, been on a plane for 2, 3 hours. Most people would go home and, you just manage to kind of squeeze it in. All of a sudden, you come in and you do this workout. I mean, and as a strength coach, I'm like, what the heck? Like, I leave here going, this is crazy. Like this guy just did, like it's crazy because I mean, you have to factor in the traveling, the tiredness, the mindset, the overload of everything that's going on in this world. And then you come in here and you get it done. Like when you leave, like how do you
I feel
feel?
good actually when I come out of I love working out with you. When we have a good session, it feels great. When I get home and I know I've done everything, and I can go home and eat a nice big bowl of ground beef,
Nice.
or a nice, treat myself once in a while to a nice steak. But knowing that I've worked for it, that feels good. That feeling, after you've had a really good workout, you can feel it throughout your entire body. That's a good sense of satisfaction. That's the dopamine rush
Right.
that exercise can give you.
That's
So
amazing.
I guess on the other side, runners would say they get a runner's high. This is more like, it's a much more mellow feeling after a great workout, but your body feels like it's done its job, and now it can heal up all the little tears in the muscle fibers, and you'll be stronger in 48 hours than you were before you went into the gym.
So if you had a few words as a politician, to share with people, because you do know a lot about the fitness world, and you've learned a lot. You continue to learn, and it's a pleasure to just work with you because I love guys like you because I like guys that work. And I got to be honest with myself, and most people have a hard time. It's easier to train someone that wants it, and I see that. And I see what you do. So how would you kind of share that with someone that, is trying to get started from your opinion? Because everybody hears it from me all the time, but I want to hear it from you because, you're not in this world, but you do practice this life, and I admire
I
that.
would just say to anybody, you might not want to do it, and that's normal. All of us are like that. There are all of us wake up that day and we're like, man, I just really don't want to train. Um, I don't want to do anything physical. That the body's in hibernation, and the longer you've been out of it, the harder it is. But show up, do a little more each day, and before you know it, you'll establish the habits of health and strength, and you'll look back and you will have no regrets. So just show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, and never give up.
That's awesome. Well, I'm super proud of you. There you go. Our future Prime Minister, Pierre Poilievre. That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Tony.
Thank you, brother. That was amazing.